This may be a little faster than the other one, but there's so much in here that I don't want to move too fast. Recap of last time. So we were talking about Jacob and his, well, 2 wives, and then the 2 concubines, or the 2 handmaidens that both the sisters gave to him for wives. They were both, from what I found in my research, they were both half sisters of Jacob's wives, but they were their handmaidens. And Leah thought having Jacob's sons would make him love her, which it did not. There was actually, excuse me, something else I was listening to specifically about this that was talking about Jacob and how he must have felt the day that Leah bought the mandrakes so that she could buy her husband. And when she ran out to meet him in the field, she says, "This day I have purchased you." So just, that's just a whole big mess for both of those people. Jared, you still have coffee in the refrigerator. So that must have been a real, I don't know, a challenge for Jacob and a challenge for her to feel like she had to buy her husband to be able to have a child that would maybe make him love her. Jacob and Laban were both tricksters. So Jacob tried to trick everybody, but then Laban tricked him by swapping Rachel with Leah on the night of their wedding. So, and then the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because then the girls end up being tricksters too. Like how Rachel lied about the idols. So if that was at the end of last time, Rachel lied about the idols that she took from her father's house, whether to have, so that she would have favor with her family gods, because in those times everybody had their household family gods that they would pray to. And so she took those and then lied about it, said she was sitting on them, and then said she had her period, so she didn't want to get up to move, so they couldn't find them. And at the end of this, Jacob, Leah, Rachel, and the 2 handmaidens, Bilhah and Zelpha, I think were their names. They all end up with 12 sons and 1 daughter. So the 12 sons end up being the 12 tribes of Israel. And then Dinah is the daughter that we are going to learn about today. And as we said before, Dinah means judgment. So Dinah, so this is Genesis 34. One day, Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and Leah went to visit some of the young women who lived in the area. But when the local prince, Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, saw Dinah, he seized her and raped her. But then he fell in love with her, and he tried to win her affection with tender words. So when a woman was defiled in this culture, she was seen as like untouchable. There's like a very small chance of her ever finding a husband after this kind of occurrence, but it seems like this man is now infatuated with her after he rapes her. So Shechem means shoulder, and Hamor, which is his father, means he-ass, like a donkey. And they're from the land of Canaan. So it's horrible. This lady was just going to visit her friends, and then this prince guy decided he wanted to have her and took her. But then he falls in love with her. So verse 4, he said to his father Hamor, "Get me this young girl, I want to marry her." Soon Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter Dinah, but since his sons were out in the fields herding his livestock, he said nothing until they returned. So that just shows, again, the value that was placed on women. Usually, even Jacob, when he hears this, it doesn't say he was outraged and then went to go defend his daughter's honor, or to gather his sons to defend his daughter's honor. It said he just hung out and waited for his sons to come back from the fields. So Hamor, Shechem's father, came to discuss the matter with Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come in from the field. As soon as they heard what had happened, they were shocked and furious that their sister had been raped. Shechem had done a disgraceful thing against Jacob's family, something that should never be done. The sons were in an uproar, even though Jacob wasn't, as soon as they heard. And Hamor, the dude's father, came to try to make things right and to ask Jacob about Dinah being his son's husband. So Hamor, this is verse 8, tried to speak with Jacob and his sons. My son Shechem is truly in love with your daughter, he said. Please let him marry her. In fact, let's arrange other marriages too. You give us your daughters for our sons, and we will give you our daughters for your sons. And you may live among us. The land is open to you. Settle here and trade with us, and feel free to buy property in the area. Then Shechem himself spoke to Dinah's father and brothers. Please be kind to me and let me marry her, he begged. I will give you whatever you ask. He doesn't apologize for defiling Dinah. There's no admittance to doing anything wrong. There's just this sense of entitlement, and we'll see that a lot of the times when the men in the scriptures choose women that are not God's people, it usually ends very bad for them. So he goes to then Shechem himself spoke, yes, and he begged and didn't apologize. No matter what dowry or gift you demand, I will gladly pay it. Just give me the girl as my wife. But since Shechem had defiled their sister Dinah, Jacob's sons responded deceitfully to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to them, we couldn't possibly allow this because you're not circumcised. It would be a disgrace for our sister to marry a man like you. But here is a solution. If every man among you will be circumcised like we are, then we will give you our daughters, and we will take your daughters for ourselves. We will live among you and become one people. But if you don't agree to be circumcised, we will take her and be on our way. Hamor and his son agreed to their proposal. Shechem wasted no time in acting on this request, for he wanted Jacob's daughter desperately. Shechem was a highly respected member of his family, and he went to his father Hamor to present this proposal to the leaders at the town gate. Now, if we remember from our past studies, the town gate was where a lot of things were decided. So he is going to propose to all of these men that he is in company with, that they all be circumcised as grown men in order to marry the women of Israel. And as we've heard in the past, usually they're pretty beautiful. So they were, Shechem was bringing this to his people to make this request that they all be circumcised and able to marry these women. So 21 says, these men are our friends. They say, Let us invite them to live here among us and trade freely. Look, the land is large enough to hold them. We can take their daughters as wives and they can marry ours, but they will consider staying here and becoming one people with us only if all of our men are circumcised just as they are. But if we do this, all of their livestock and possessions will eventually be ours. Come, let's agree to their terms and let them settle here among us. So the men in the town council agreed with Hamor and Shechem, and every male in town was circumcised. Remembering that back to the beginning when this circumcision was instilled, that this was God's covenant promise with his people, that would declare them his people. So this is a grievous thing for these gentlemen to even ask people that had no plans. So there was no discussion of circumcision and then you're going to follow the ways of the Almighty God. There was just the act of circumcision without the covenant relationship that is supposed to be going along with that. So it leads me to believe that Jacob didn't do a great job communicating his relationship with God to his children, and he maybe didn't do a great job in raising his children either, but remembering that he himself is flawed. So these kids told these guys to do this, and they all agreed. Again, not to follow God, but they agreed in order to take the women as their wives and then to eventually have all of the great possessions that Jacob and his sons had. Verse 25, 3 days later, when their wounds were still sore, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, who were Dinah's full brothers, took their swords, so they were Leah's sons, took their swords and entered the town without opposition. Then they slaughtered every male there, including Hamor and his son Shechem. They killed them with their swords and then took Dinah from Shechem's house and returned to their camp. So she was already there. So they did it's so challenging to think about what it was like for these women. So for Dinah, first she's raped by these guys. Her brothers probably didn't tell her it was a plot. She probably just overheard whatever they were saying and then went with this guy back to his house. Luckily, she wasn't able to, or she wasn't forced to have sex with him anymore because he had just been circumcised. So, but they were willing to trade their pain for wealth. And then Dinah's in this house with this dude for 3 days. So they came and rescued her, I guess, or exacted their revenge, I think would be a more appropriate thing to say. So the sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city. So they took everything because their sister had been defiled there. So they came and killed all the guys. And then verse 28, they seized all the flocks and herds and donkeys, everything they could lay their hands on, both inside the town and outside in the fields. They looted all the wealth and plundered their houses. They also took their little children and wives and led them away as captives. Afterward, Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have ruined me. You have made me stink among all the people of the land, among all the Canaanites and Perizzites. We are so few that they will join forces and crush us. I will be ruined, and my entire household will be wiped out." Again, Jacob's worried about himself. He's worried about his own hide. He's worried the fear of man, which has been seen in his father and then his father's father, where they're afraid of these guys, so they lie about their wives. So he's now afraid that because his sons did this thing, that now he's going to be attacked. And again, there's nobody thinking about or worrying about what happened to Dinah in any justice for that. He's only concerned with himself. So then the boys respond, "But why should we let him treat our sister like a prostitute?" They retorted angrily. Chapter 35. So that was it. That was the end of that whole thing. And then in the next chapter, God says to Jacob, "Arise and go to Bethel," which that was that was the first place that he was supposed to go. So when they found themselves at this other area, God had never led them there. So Jacob decided to go to this place himself without consulting God, and then it ended up as a disaster. He went there of his own accord, and nobody was watching over Dinah as well. So she had 12 brothers, and this city was probably not super safe. And nobody was watching over her. And as we said, women were seen as more of a commodity than a valuable. So nobody was watching over Dinah. When she went into the town, she was not protected. And then when her father found out, he didn't make any attempt to go and find out what happened, to go to this person that was a prince in the land. So the princes didn't have very much couth. They didn't seem to obviously didn't seem to care very much about women. And it's interesting because we'll see this pattern again, that after he sleeps with her, then he falls in love with her. So it's an interesting thing there that, you know, could still be common here, where a gentleman will take advantage of a lady and then, you know, try to smooth things back over, saying, "Oh baby, I love you so much, you know I didn't mean that," and things like that. So patterns have a tendency to repeat themselves. And so both the tribes of Levi, so as I said, all of the sons of Jacob were the tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel. Technically 13, because there is Dinah, she's a lady, she didn't have her own tribe. But Jacob does go to adopt one of Joseph's sons as his own, which entitles Joseph to all of the things that his other sons have. Similarly to how we are now adopted sons into the family of God through Christ. So the 12 tribes of Israel are all described very well, and Dinah is not mentioned again. It's unknown whether or not she was able to marry after that. I didn't do a ton of research into that. I can do that, and we can, if I come up with anything, I can mention it next week. Both the tribes of Levi and Simeon were scattered, and then the tribe of Simeon eventually melded into the tribe of Judah, which is the line of Jesus, the tribe of Judah. So again, God takes a broken thing and changes it into something amazing. So yeah, and it has no mention of Leah consoling her daughter, or Rachel consoling her niece, stepdaughter, but I'm sure all of those things occurred, even though they weren't mentioned. So now Jacob is taking his family, who are now pretty much adults, and they're heading on out. So I didn't go any further, so we will stop there. And I'm not sure what the next woman is, but we'll all find out together next week.